Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's get your podcast with yours truly, Don. I'm super thrilled to be here with you. We have a very special guest today, which I will get into an explanation in a minute. But before I do want to make some announcements for you guys. First things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. It will be featured on all of the social media platforms, and you can also find this episode on Spotify. I also want to remind you of my social media platforms. So we have Facebook is Miss India White, Twitter is the India White. I also have Instagram that's going to be Indie Speak and Teach. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. So find me there. Let's get connected. Let's make some things happen together. Can't wait to connect with you guys, and thanks to those that are already supporting. I also wanted to remind you to check out my website, www.india-white.com, whenever you get a chance to see some books, blogs, updates, and if you're wanting to book me or schedule me for an upcoming event. Speaking of upcoming events, I have quite a few on the calendar. I can't wait to see you guys next week in Texas. We're going strong at Camps Conference. I have a couple of sessions there. I can't wait to see you guys. I'll be speaking on July 16th and July 17th. So stop by and see me if you're there at the Camps Conference, and also stop by the Savage booth. We've got a lot of treats for you guys. I'll also see you guys at the NCSM conference in September. We'll be in Chicago there. Thank you, NCSM, for allowing me to be a major speaker. I'll be at NCTM doing some sessions there. I'll be at ICTM in Iowa. Can't wait to see you guys there in October. Plan to see you guys in Ohio at the OCTM. We'll also be at ATMNE conference in October. It's a lot. I know it's a lot, but I love it. It's like we're all sticking together, right, guys? So there's all these great things, and there are some conferences that I have not said. I know I'll be going to California to see some of you guys in August as well. And if you haven't seen your organization and you're like, hey, I want to get India on, just please don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to me, okay? We'll make some things happen. Now, I also want to remind you guys of the Grit mini workshop. Thank you, Robert and team, for that. It is called How to Harness Grit to Help Students Thrive, and you can find it on the Grassroots Workshop website, Grassroots Workshops website. Check that out. There are so many great different workshops on there from all mini or greater levels and whatnot. So with that said, I am super honored to be able to introduce you guys. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Someone who I have vetted, someone that was there for me, who is one of the reasons why I am successful today. I'm thankful to God for putting her in my life. And that is going to be Mrs. Wilson, my former math teacher when I was homeless. Welcome, Mrs. Wilson, to the podcast.
Thank you, India. You know I love you, sweetie pie. Okay.
Okay, so they don't know how cool you are. They don't know why you're so awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I was a teacher. Actually, let me tell you my whole backstory. I'm from Rhode Island originally and ended up moving down to Florida and becoming a teacher at Venice High School, which is where I met this incredible young woman who I just adore. And I taught mathematics at Venice High for, several decades. And absolutely
loved, that.
Yes, I was there for a couple of decades. Loved.
And she was awesome, by the way. You taught me like what, college algebra?
Yeah, pre-calculus.
Yep. Yeah, and she was no joke. And you know,
I was tough.
So what got you into teaching? What was your passion? Like, what made you say, I'm gonna use my grit, my determination to pay it forward to be a teacher?
You know, I love that, India. Actually, I knew I wanted to be a teacher by the time I was in the 5th grade. You know, what I love is when I can take something and help people understand it and really integrate it into them so that they truly can actually love it too. I hope I instilled some love of math in you.
She did.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Wilson did. I wanted to be a Mrs. Wilson. And I have taught you guys about Mrs. Wilson. If you come to my sessions, I have told you about her teaching style. She did not play the radio. She was very about the math, but she was fun. She was approachable, and she knew her stuff. And as a result, she poured so much love and light into my life that I am now able to join you guys on this math platform. And speaking of that, I kind of want to just take it back to when you know, had me as a student in your class, and we went through that, you know, situation, that hardship, when my brother had passed and things. Can you talk to the audience about that, and how did you have the resilience to continue to move forward, and what were you thinking about? What were you going through as an educator at that time?
All right, in terms of, all right, so let's take it back to when I first met you in my class. We'll go with that first.
Yeah, let's go for it.
You know, India is the force of nature in my classroom. I still remember the first day of school meeting you, and I thought, oh my God, what an incredible young woman. Absolutely incredible. And, you know, that's really what it is. It's just taking every child at face value and letting them be the best person of who they are. And I saw your determination right from the very beginning. I did. Your intelligence, your determination, everything that you wanted. And, you know, and I know I was an inspiration, but I'm not sure I was everything you needed me to be, but it was enough. You know, and I think that's what we all need to know as teachers. Sometimes we're not going to be the most perfect of everything, but if we care about, and we do, we care about our kids, and we want to make a difference for our kids, and we provide that heart and that love for our students, you never know the difference we're going to make and where that's going to carry far in the future. You know, I look at you now and I'm like, oh my gosh. All right, so I got to use the starfish analogy because this is one of my favorite things. You know, it's like every one of our students could be that starfish that we, you know, is on the beach, and you don't know what's going to happen to them, but you take them and you nurture them and you do whatever you can for them. And that starfish just shines and becomes incredible, and you are that starfish.
Thank you. It's so sad.
How incredible is that? That just makes me so happy. It does. When I see you now, India, it's like every teacher's dream is to have their students move forward and be the best version of themselves that they can be, no matter what goes on. Like you were saying, when that happened with your brother, I mean, other things that happened to you after that, you became homeless, but you still had this inner, just inside you. You knew that you were going to succeed no matter what.
And, you know, I'm thankful to you, Mrs. Wilson. And, you know, it's that grit. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
It's grit, right? And so I just remembered I was at a breaking point when my brother passed. And I remember walking into your classroom.
Yeah.
You were given a test that Friday.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you felt. It was crazy. She didn't have words for me. Nobody had words.
I know.
And
what can you say?
Yeah, and then what were your thoughts when you guys prepared that teddy bear and all that stuff? Do you remember that?
You know, I remember. It's fun. See, we all have different pieces of what was so meaningful in our lives.
Right.
All I know is that I wanted to do whatever we could do for you to make you know that you were cared for and loved.
Yeah.
And that you were going to get through whatever you had to get through and do what you needed to do. So remind me of the teddy bear and everything.
So yeah,
all right, let's tell everybody how long ago this was. I mean, we're talking about, when did you graduate? 2000 and what?
So I graduated 2003.
All right, so 2003. Were you a junior? Or
I was a junior in your class.
You were a junior in my class.
And
so
then
2003. Yeah. So we're talking like.
So 2002 was when my brother died.
So 22 years ago.
22 years ago.
Long, long time.
And I remember when I came back from the funeral and from being out. So remember, I was homeless, so I had to go to the shelter, go to the funeral, and then go back to the shelter, right? And so it was during that time when I came back, and I was, you know, the shelter was driving me back to school, and I got to the math class, which was first period. There was this big white teddy bear sitting in my desk, and this red poster, and it said, "Sorry for your loss." And all of the students had written something in there. All of my friends, Brian, Mark, all of them wrote these love messages to me of where we can't imagine, you know, what you're going through, and we're here for you. And I mean, it even carried over to when we met at our reunion, our class reunion, our high school reunion.
Yep.
Some of them came up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, India, you know, you remember this?" And So I mean, you made such an impact on us with
Oh,
that,
honey, I'm
know.
so happy that
So
happened.
yeah,
You know, you how wonderful though for you to know how loved you were at that
yeah,
time. Because I think sometimes in schools we don't always know how loved we are. You know, one of the things I always used to do is have kids. I used to do a lot of group learning, and I used to have kids write something positive about one another and the kids in their group, and always say, "Okay, so what was some positive, wonderful thing that another group member did for you?" And for some kids, it's the only positive thing they have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely for my situation,
Yep.
and I think the beautiful part was, Mrs. Wilson had me to the place. Like she was like my teacher of the year. She had me to a place where I was so comfortable that in the midst of the trauma I was going through, the abuse I'd already endured, and the uncertainty as a homeless student, I still looked forward to her class. Like, I could not wait to go to Miss Wilson's class. And I remember I put a lizard on her desk before. So my friends dared me. They said, India, I was like, I'm gonna get this lizard, and when she's gone, because she ran a tight ship, so
Oh, yeah.
she wasn't gone long. So you had to do this real quick. So I remembered I got the lizard, I put it on her desk, and then she like looked out. She's like, whoa, like when she kept her composure, but we were dying inside because like we were like, yes, like mission accomplished, but we were so comfortable, and then. I remember, you meeting me and, just encouraging me about college and,
Absolutely.
and then it was like so much uncertainty in the air, but, here we are today. And so I wanted to bring Mrs. Wilson on to just give some nuggets to teachers that maybe you're dealing with a first generation student that is dealing with trauma and you might need a plan, or you might not know necessarily how to react if a student says their brother died or their mom is in the hospital. And so maybe Miss Wilson, you can tell us what are some things some teachers can do to help their students along?
It's a great question, India, because so many kids are having so many issues these days. There's so many things that are happening. I think it's just being almost like a safe place and being able to let kids know you care about them and that it gives them a place to be grounded. Like I think you always felt safe in that classroom.
Yes, I did.
And you felt cared about. And that makes all the difference in the world. So even when someone's going through trauma, it's being grounded. It's knowing there is that place that you can walk into and know that people care about you.
Yeah. And then what about like first generation students that also, Mrs. Wilson, maybe like I was first gen, so I didn't have anyone that was going to college.
Yep.
And so even though I liked math, why invest in it if I might not even go to college? Like, how do they navigate through that? Like students that they've got the brain, but maybe they're dealing with peer pressure, dealing with uncertainty of finances or uncertainty of their future. So, how do you cultivate grit in those students and, help push them along even with, them being in kind of like a crab pot situation or, in a situation where the odds are stacked against them.
That's such a great point. And, it really, and I still tutor now. And one of the things that I always work on, I tutor calculus and pre-calc. Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep my head in that game. But it's really just encouraging kids and letting them know that they're going to be the best. Because you're right. Maybe it's not the college path for every student. Maybe it's not going to be what we think is going to be the next step. Because we always push our kids for college and higher education. But a lot of times it's just letting them know that you cherish them for who they are. You're going to help them move forward, and you're going to believe in them. And I think the word belief is such a huge word, because sometimes we don't believe in ourselves, and we need somebody else to believe in us and encourage us and to help us. And whether you go to college or not, it doesn't matter. It's just believing in yourself and knowing who you need to be. I think that can be a huge piece because it's a challenge. I mean, it's very, very hard to be able to go through that.
It's interesting you say that because, like, in my grit framework, which thanks to Mrs. Wilson, we have a grit framework. We have this, and I talk about self-efficacy and how we need to strengthen the belief in ourselves, but also in our students. Students have to believe that we believe in them and in their ability. And I'm sure at times in your class, I was not the smartest kid. I would study 3 hours and get a C or a B here and there. I mean, she knows the dirt, right? So, I mean, but how do you keep pushing? I don't know what the magic sauce was that you did to cultivate grit in me and that inner determination, that inner drive, and to keep it moving forward. Even after I came back from my brother's funeral, and I remember coming back, and it was like you just got me right back in that mode. Like, what advice do you have for teachers that want to cultivate that grit in students and keep the wheels going and keep that motivation moving forward?
All right, so one of the pieces that kind of comes to my mind, one of the most important things to me in the classroom was making sure all the kids knew we were rowing in the same direction. Okay? That it wasn't a case where it's a gotcha. Like, I want to make sure the kids, don't quite pass that task because then I gotcha. I'm smarter than you. No, I know I am. I've got more education. Whatever. Okay? It's not that game or that challenge. It's really, we're in the boat. The boat is to get you to the end of the course with as much knowledge as you can possibly do so that you can go on and be as successful as you need to be in the future. So no matter what happens in the middle, you still have that boat that you could climb back into, and the teacher is really the captain of that boat.
That's powerful.
But the kids are rowing the boat with you, and the more they understand that, and the more you realize you're all on that same path, that was so important to me. I wanted my kids to be able to get to the end of the course and know everything that I could possibly teach them so that they could be the best they could be.
Wow. And it's so funny you say that. It was never a gotcha in Mrs. Wilson's class. And we've talked about that. And I think there's this place, this gray area with some teachers face of, I've got to be loyal to the curriculum and loyal to my grading, process. And I've got to be loyal to the timelines. And I don't care if I leave all the kids behind. If everybody flunks but 2 kids, I taught what I needed to teach and we're moving forward, and I think teachers need support in balancing,
Yes.
the grading and the grading processes. And if everybody flunks, is it okay to reteach? Is it okay? And so what advice do you have for that? Because, you were teaching higher level math. She was like queen of calculus and all that stuff at I remember she had like the AP stats or AB, PC calculus. And so, what advice do you have for teachers that are balancing curriculum and then balancing deadlines, and how do they keep that moral compass of, I'm giving you more time, but I'm not giving you away everything, and then I'm also not doing the opposite side of a gotcha scale? What advice do you have?
Yeah, and that's a tough one because you know what? Again, and I left the classroom in 2006, so I've been out of the classroom for 18 years. Things have changed. There's no question. I had the AP exams to study for. We had our dual enrollment exams with a lot of other testing, but there's a lot more pressure on teachers now. There's no question. But if the kids are not in the boat with us and they're not understanding, and I would always judge if I ever gave a test where the majority of kids did not pass that test, that failure's on me, not the kids. Truly.
That's powerful.
And that was how I looked at it. It was like, okay, you screwed that up. You obviously didn't get that across to the kids and where they needed to be.
Wow.
And in India, you kind of said it. Believe me, guys, my tests were never easy. My tests, I taught major critical thinking. I would teach concepts, and then I would change the concept completely on the test. So you had to apply a concept to higher level thinking. And in a few minutes, and I want to talk about that because I once took an entire class of Algebra 1 failures. Did you know that?
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell. Here comes an interesting story. So I would often have colleagues saying, "Oh, the only reason your kids do well in your class is you have all the top kids." I'm like, "All right, no problem. I want a whole class of all the kids that failed Algebra 1."
Wow.
So
I didn't know this. This is good.
Yeah, it's a great story. So I took the kids that had all failed Algebra 1, and I thought, I am going to make those kids the best I can make them. So what I did on day 1, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the movie Stand and Deliver. Remember, I was a math teacher. Stand and Deliver was about a group of all kids who were from, communities that were maybe not the best in LA, I think it was. And that teacher took all those kids and brought them through advanced placement calculus because it has nothing to do with what kids can achieve. So I made them all watch it on the first day. That's what we did. We watched the movie on the first day, and then we debriefed that movie. Like, what did you notice? What did you pick up out of that? And then, okay, so I'm going to tell you what I did with these kids. I said, I believe in you. I know that you can be the best that you can be. I'm going to teach you the Algebra 1 honors curriculum. That's what I told the kids. And I did. I said, I'm going to teach you the Algebra 1 honors curriculum. I said, and I'm going to teach you how to help each other. And I got to the point, so I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was kind of fun. We got through the first few days, and they were doing it. They were keeping up. And then a lot of them were doing the homework. So what I did this. I took the time, and I would phone call them at home. The kid would answer, and I'm like, Susie, you're not doing your homework. She goes, and I'm like, I will outlast you. I will make sure that I will outlast you, Susie. You are going to do your homework. And so Susie starts bringing in her homework. So Susie starts doing it. And then I got the kids, they all started giving up their lunches, and they would start tutoring each other.
Wow.
They would work in pairs. I always taught in pairs. That was one of the most important things to me, because kids work together. And it got to the point where I gave up my lunch every day, and I would eat at my desk or whatever, and the kids would come in and they would all work together. It was amazing. And I got them through the Algebra 1 honors curriculum. One of those students, we got to pick one kid per year who was like top kid. One of the kids in that class became my golden eagle at the school, which was the top award that it could be. And I wanted them to walk away and know they weren't failures.
Yeah.
And they weren't stupid. They just needed somebody to believe in them and to hold the bar higher.
Wow.
You know, when we hold that bar up higher, it can make such a difference for kids. It's like you hold the bar up, you don't make it impossible, and you go, I know you can do this, and I'm going to help you get there. I'm going to help you get there, because we're all going to get in that boat together.
And the thing is, I think that's what it was. That's the kicker. She never lowered the bar. Not even for me. Like when I came back from the funeral, it wasn't like, okay, what was you? Here's a free pass for the rest of the class. No, I still had to take the final. I still had to take that. I still had to retake the test. I remember the bar was still high. Like the expectations was still there, and she still believed in me.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't take any foolishness. Still had homework due. All these things. And I think that's what we need to do, even in underserved communities. And being first generation, being African American, and all this. Not once did Mrs. Wilson make me feel that, because I was African American, that I couldn't achieve, or that because I was underserved, that I couldn't achieve. She didn't focus on that. She focused on the inner drive. She focused on what she taught us. And as a result, we were able to overcome through grit and through focusing on the future. It was never about the limitations ahead of us or what society has said. And so what message do you have for teachers and how they can do that, how they can continue to focus on the things that they know they have control over, like grit and the inner drive of students and the forward thinking, and then their expectations, when they're in the muck and mire and they're trying to, balance all this and figure it all out.
Whoa. Okay, for everybody out there that's a teacher right now, I know how hard this is, okay? Because there's so much to do. All I can do is just speak from my own experience. It's just holding the bar there. And like when you came back, India, and I knew that, you would have those situations. But if I had just let you completely off the hook and go, okay, you don't need to do any of this now, we're going to make special whatever. No, because you would not have believed in yourself.
Right.
At all, because you would have thought, and I couldn't. No, but it was helping you get to that point. Maybe giving you that accommodation to give you extra time to do what needed to be done. Maybe some extra tutoring if you needed that help. But it wasn't just like, well, tough luck. There you go, and there it is. So it's really knowing that as much as we can to be able to assist the kids to get to where they need to go to, but knowing they need that sense of accomplishment too. They really do. And, and again, I've been out of the classroom for 20 years, but I can tell you when I would teach in pairs, do you still remember when you worked in pairs?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah.
It was huge. I can tell you that changed my classroom more than anything else, because when kids work all alone and we expect them to work alone, it's too hard because you become the only disseminator of the knowledge. But when you put kids in pairs, and I would ask some of the kids, I would figure out which kids were maybe the top kids and kids that were struggling. And some of my top kids would volunteer to work with somebody that was struggling a little bit more. They would share notes with them. If they were absent, they would let them know what they missed. They would come back and they go, hey, let me help you with your homework. I was like, oh my gosh, that changed my classroom. And I don't see why that couldn't work in this day and age. What do
Yeah.
you think?
I know it can,
Yeah.
and I advocate for cooperative learning strategies. And,
Yes.
Linda Kagan, she works in groups of four, she works in pairs. And
Yep.
it's having like the think, pair, share activity for student
Love those.
engagement. It's key because, we're not the only one that holds knowledge, right?
No.
So students, and some students, they have math anxiety, right? And then they feel like they can't do math anyway. So then when you do partner them with someone that might be a little bit stronger, that's willing to come on board and partner with them,
Yes.
that is where the change happens. That's when they really start having that sense of self identity starts to change into, I am a math person. Like I can do math. Like I'm not limited because my parents couldn't do math, or because I came from this community, or because I'm from this particular ethnicity. No, I could do math no matter what, because I am learning how. And I do think it's all about like having that growth mindset, that grittiness, to where students can look beyond those limitations, especially at the beginning of the school year, when they're coming in covered in fear. I mean, how was that for you? Like beginning of the school year, when you're getting to know the students, what did you do? I mean, she had some of the best classroom management, hands down. So I just wanted you to talk to them, Mrs. Wilson, about what did you do as an educator, when you're establishing, rules, procedures, classroom management, things like that.
That's a great question, because I remember my very first year of teaching, it was a disaster. I started teaching when I was like barely 20 years old, because I graduated early from college, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I learned very quickly. When the kids came in, what I would do first, because I know the most important thing is learning their names as fast as you possibly can. And I'm a very visual person, so I would put them all alphabetically, and then I would study the seating chart. I would start there, and then I would move them if I needed to do that. But starting on day one, I talked about us all having a goal of where we needed to be at the end of the year, how we were going to be focused on what we needed to do, because I was their biggest cheerleader, okay? And I was going to get them to where they needed to get to. And in that process, there were rules. and I actually had a classroom where we would start before the bell rang. It was hysterical. By the time the bell rang, we'd already started. Okay,
Yeah.
So it was, but the kids knew that, and they bought into it. And I also, you deal with kids with a sense of humor too. Kids are funny.
Yeah.
kids are so funny, and you got to love them. You just got to absolutely love them. But it is India. It's really just having the rules and knowing where we are. It'd be like silly things. Like if a kid forgot a pencil, oh my gosh, I think I sent 3 kids to the office in like X number of decades. Okay, if somebody forgot a pencil, I'd look over and go, who can let the kid borrow a pencil? It's like, I'm not gonna send them to the office because they forgot a pencil. It's really learning where is the bar that it's an issue as opposed to an annoyance. Not having a pencil is an annoyance, which can be solved pretty easily. And one of the other things that I did, all right, so here's the other thing that I did a lot in the classroom. When I would, and again, there was no way any of us have time to grade every single child's homework, okay? There aren't enough hours in our lives to do that. So I would walk around at the beginning. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do, the clipboard.
The beginning of every single class. And I would take me 10 minutes. It was worth it. And I would visit with each kid. They had an assignment to do while I was doing this, and they were in pairs, so they were all working. But I would visit with each child and go, let me see your homework. And it was a spot check, and okay, and it wasn't perfect or whatever. But it gave me the opportunity to interact with the kids. So they felt like I wasn't just that body in front of the room. There was an interaction time. And if they didn't do their homework, it was kind of like, oh, Scotty didn't do his homework. It's like, I'm going to make sure I do it next time. Because often when kids have some accountability, it changes things.
Accountability. And I talk about that in my GRIT framework with that time management, goal setting. And so I think you're spot on with what you're saying. And it's funny because it was during her class that I was doing my pre-calculus homework in Starlight. Because my mom, I came from, some traumatic situations. And one was that, growing up, and I'm saying this because you might have a student that's going through something like this, but my mom had a deadline as to when lights were off. And so when I got home from school, I wasn't able to get right into homework. I had to clean the house first. So I had to clean, remember, like I had to clean, I had to sweep, I had to do laundry, vacuum, I had to mop, do the stairs, and cook, take care of my sister, my mentally handicapped sister, my younger sister, and then get to my homework. So when I finally got a chance to sit down and do Mrs. Wilson's homework, she would turn off the light and say, "Lights off. You're not going to be raising my light bill and all this." I mean, it was wild. God bless her soul. She did the best she could, but it was just some of the things we went through. And I remember being like, "Oh, Miss Wilson assigned us 20 problems." So I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain that. So I would just open the blinds in my room, move the curtain back. Problem one, starlight. And so I did my pre-calculus homework in
I never
starlight.
knew that. I
Yeah.
never knew that.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
In starlight, I did.
So what made you feel that that was so important that you had to get that done?
The
So let's look at it-
expectations.
That's it. Let's look at it from the
Yeah.
other side, because now you're looking at it from both the teacher's point and
Yeah.
the student's point.
So for me, it was she had that expectation.
Yep.
There was no wiggle room. And that's the problem is if we create too much wiggle room of, it's okay, I let it slide this time. And we don't have a backbone as a teacher, that not a backbone to where you're a drill sergeant, you're merciless,
No,
you don't
you
give
can't do
opportunities,
that. No.
but a backbone to where it's like every day, this is my expectation. And I knew when Miss Wilson's work was due, you better have it done. And another thing was also peer pressure. I was hanging around so many smart people, Brian,
Yes.
Mark, and all them,
Oh, yeah.
who are now surgeons, right? We all have our doctorates. That was our group. And so I didn't want to come to the table and not be as proficient in it as they were or not perform at that level. So I had a lot of peer pressure of, I know they're making straight A's. I better come to the table and with the same energy, that same vibration and the same output and the same, just everything I'm putting into the class, so that whenever we're taking our notes out and we're having those peer-to-peer conversations, I have something to talk about. So the expectation was so high on the end of Mrs. Wilson that when she walked around, I knew it was an expectation. You better have that homework done, and then when I would talk to my friends, I knew in order to have a conversation and then to be in their group, being cool, like hanging out with them at lunch, hanging out after school, they were smart and they didn't want to just hang out with this anybody, right? So to me, it was like a peer pressure of we represent excellence. And so I wanted to be a part of that. And so I aligned. Even in those moments of adversity, I had to channel myself, channel my energies, and use grit to get me through that. That was just that inner motivation. And there were times that I was so tired and I'm like, oh my word, I just cleaned the whole house, but let's go at it, But it also became a way of escape from some of the things that I went through. And so I kind of want to talk to you now, Mrs. Wilson, about this, because, some people will say, people like me, like African-American girls or, people going through homelessness, students, talking about students, to have a pity and lower the standard and, just kind of feel almost like poor them. They can't, because the situation's so cumbersome and so adverse and so many obstacles that I'm just gonna, lower those expectations or, just really focus only on what they're going through and just give them a pass for, how do teachers keep their integrity when it comes down to making sure that, yes, they're moving the needle forward. And if they do have a kid that is in that rut, how do they help to change the mindset, to help them to have a growth mindset beyond the adverse situations that they're going through?
That is so hard. But so every child, I grew up, I didn't have the best childhood either. You know what I mean? We all come to the classroom. We come to whatever situation we're in. Nobody knows what's been going on in our lives. No one knows what the teacher is going on in their lives. You know what I mean? When they're in the classroom, we all have our issues. We all have things that are going on. But when we lower the bar and we just make it like, oh, you really don't need to do that. I really believe that the child starts to feel less than in many ways, like, oh, I can't accomplish that. The other kids can't. You just mentioned it beautifully when you said, I was going to hang around with some of the other kids and I wanted to meet that bar of excellence. I wanted to raise myself up Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can't accommodate in some ways and you can't give extra help and you can't do some other things. But when we keep on lowering the bar for someone, we end up with somebody who at the end of the game goes, oh, I guess I'm just not good enough. You know,
Yeah.
I just can't do what the other kids can do. And
Wow.
you know what? We all can. We all have struggles. We all have stuff. And it's not to mention, people have harder struggles than others.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, life has changed in a lot of ways since I've been in the classroom. But we got to find what's inside of us and pull ourselves out because you know what? I don't know about you, but life is not easy. I don't care where you are.
Right.
I mean, we all struggle every day.
We
There's
all
all
struggle.
things that go on every day. We have to be the best version of ourselves. And if we cannot be the best version of ourselves, where are we?
Wow. So, do you have any other advice for educators? And I know you're also doing wellness when it comes down to just self care and love on themselves. Because, like, I know we get burned out, and I know sometimes we're just running on coffee or we're just running on Dunkin' Donuts. You know, I mean, I've been in that rut before. You know, how do you break that cycle of get like the imbalance, like having that burnout as it how do they not burn out? You know, what advice do you have?
Boy, that's because I lived many years of teaching without even eating lunch because you know I was giving up my time to tutor and I was giving up my time for the kids. So I totally get it. And you know, and most of us who are teachers were codependent, so everybody comes before us. You know what I mean? There's like a million people before what we give ourselves.
Yeah.
But you know, in terms of self-care, it really is, and again, it's hard because I know I used to grade papers and do everything. But you've got to find the ability to make sure you eat well. You try to get enough sleep. I know that's hard. You know, not everybody, you know, if you're raising your own children, you have your own families, there's so many, it's hard. It's hard to do all that. But even supplementing, you know, making sure, right, so here, because that's what I actually work with non-pharmaceutical options with health professionals now. B complex. So let me recommend something for all of you. A B complex, not just B12, guys, B complex. That actually supports healthy levels of stress, healthy levels of anxiety, healthy levels of depression. So just B complex can make a huge difference for people because especially as teachers, our adrenals are getting drained, the stress, the anxiety. So it's hard. It's hard. You're getting there early in the day, you're working all day, and you're dealing with hundreds of personalities. I mean, on a daily basis, depending. I mean, I would have up to 40 to 45 kids in a class, and we had 6 classes a day. So I had in excess of 240 kids sometimes that I was dealing with. Those are completely different personalities. I mean, it just depended. And I know all of you are having, you know, the same kind of struggles and whatever it is, but it really is, it's eating well. You know, a lot of the food that we put in our bodies is not serving us to be healthy and to be our best self. So if we can't be our best self, how do we expect our kids to be their best selves?
Wow.
You know, that's an important piece as well.
That's a great message. So how do they start on that journey of, I guess, supplements and things like that? Like maybe you could support, how could they get in touch with you if they're wanting, you know, maybe to reach out and have a further conversation, whether it's about teaching or about healthy living and things like that? How could they reach you, Mrs. Wilson?
Perfect. No, that would be great. I'm more than happy to do that. I work with health professionals. I educate patients all the time, but I also work with individuals, and I do totally free consultations. Okay. So if anybody wants to reach out, I'll have India just put my email into however she does this, the chat or whatever it may be. She'll put it somewhere. But please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to do that. I've spent email. Actually, it's do you want me to tell you right now?
Yeah.
Cheryl Wilson. nc@gmail.com.
Okay, guys.
Yep. Please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
I'm going to put this in so you can reach my math teacher. And if you want any, any inside scoop, any drama, any Kool-Aid story, she's got it all. So, I mean, I don't know what type of student I was. I wonder.
Okay, so let me let's talk about that. Okay. India was a bright light. She was incredible from the moment I met her. I just knew that there was something inside you that just shone very, very brightly, honey. Truly. And you know what? It is such a joy when those students come into our classroom, every child is a joy as well. But you know what? Every so often, a really, really special person comes into the classroom and into our lives. And I am so blessed that I was able to be part of your journey
Thank
and
you.
your story. And when I look at what you've accomplished now and who you are and the bright light that you are for the world, it could almost make me cry.
Yeah.
So I am just so happy.
I'm feeling those tears.
I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
I adore you. You're an amazing mom. You're an amazing teacher. You're amazing. She's an amazing human being, as you all know, or you would not be on this podcast. So I'm gonna give her a hug right now for all of you. Okay. Love you, sweetheart. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. Aw.
All right.
See, I made her cry. That's it.
She was the best teacher.
Aw.
We need to
Sweet.
be like Miss Wilson and see beyond the pain of our students and still motivate them as they are going through hardships. And I'm just taking your message now, in these books with Sabbath on every stage. I'm taking a little bit of Mrs. Wilson with me. And so I encourage you guys, please reach out to my math teacher, Miss Wilson,
It's so sweet.
about, whether it's supplements or just how to teach kids that, you just don't know what to do. You don't know how to connect. You don't know how to help them. She's the real deal. And so I endorse her 150%. And so it has been a high honor, Mrs. Wilson.
Oh,
This
this
been
has
priceless.
been such an honor for me. Again, I'm just so thrilled that I was part of your journey, honey
Thank
bun,
you.
and that you're just such an extraordinary human being. So
Thank you.
love you.
Love you too. So yeah, guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed this. This is like one of the best episodes for sure. This is definitely going on the top. And if you guys are wanting to catch this episode later, I told you before, and I'll make another quick announcement that you can definitely find the Let's Get Gritty podcast. You can find it on Spotify. You can also find it on all of the social media outlets. Again, if you're looking for the Let's Get Gritty podcast, it's going to be on Spotify and all of our social media podcasts. You can also check out my website, www.india-white.com, for more books, blogs, and to schedule me for another event, speaking, coaching, or whatnot. And then, of course, make sure you're following me whenever you get a chance on social media. My social media handles for you guys are: Facebook is Miss India White, LinkedIn is the India White. I have to clean these up. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. I will see many of you at these events on the screen. Can't wait to see you guys next week at camps. Please visit my booth. If you've seen this podcast, run it by me. I would love to talk to you on a deeper level about this as well. I'll see you guys at NCSM and all these other conferences upcoming. Continue to be awesome, amazing rock stars that you are. And until next time, stay gritty. See you guys.